Good afternoon. We are live now. A warm welcome to the webinar on transforming agriculture through agri startups. And this event is being organized. This webinar is being organized as a part of the National Agri Horticultural Show 2021, which is being held from 21st to 23rd of January at Bokaka. So a warm welcome to the speakers, to the participants who are watching this at Bokaghat, Assam, as well as those who are watching this on YouTube. And this 3-day event includes exhibition, webinars, training programs, seminars, and cultural programs, competitions, and whole gamut of activities aiming at transforming agriculture value chain, and both in terms of practices as well as in terms of outcomes. So I welcome you all. And now I would request my colleague Vishwajit, heads our Northeast, who's the Director of Agriculture and Food Processing, Government of Assam.
Thank you, Atul, and welcome everyone. We have with us Mr. Abdul Dalil. He is the Director, Horticulture, Government of Assam. He is also the main architect of this entire national Agri Horti show that is happening out here in Bokaghat, which is very close to Kaziranga. Many of you might have heard about Kaziranga. So he is going to deliver a formal welcome address to all of us. May I invite Mr. Dalil to speak?
Thank you, Chakraborty. Good afternoon to all those who are in line from across Assam, India, and from the all globes. The thanks of this theme of this session is that transforming agriculture through agri startups. This is the venue is National Agri Horti Show 2020 with virtual participation from international sectors. Thing is that after the post-COVID scenario, the viable sector is the agri-horti and allied. Being the viable sector and the developing and the commercial sector of that sector, this is the most potential employment sector of this unemployed youth and girls like that. As a part of this event, I hope that the deliveries coming from UKs and US and their new technologies that feasible to our part of India will be implemented in full in this region to develop the agri-horti sector. I most welcome all the participants, especially those who are in line, so that the valuable deliveries coming from this will help us. That's all. Thank you. Wish you a great success of this session. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Jalil. And not only is he joining from US, but the timing is also slightly, it's almost 6 o'clock in the morning there. So welcome again. And now I would Mr. Hemendra Mathur, who chairs the FICCI venture partner of Bharat Innovation Fund, for has over 2 years private equity, and he is management graduate from IIM Ahmedabad and agricultural university. So welcome, over to you.
Thank you, Atul, and thanks to Piki and everyone, all the hosts for giving this opportunity. I sincerely appreciate, and good that we are discussing a topic close to my heart on what agri startups can do to the ecosystem, particularly in transforming Indian agriculture. So let me just share the screen. I'll probably take 10 minutes to make the presentation. I hope that's okay. Yeah, let me just share the screen. Atul, can you see the screen?
Yeah, it's visible, sir.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So once again, thanks for the opportunity. The topic that I want to cover in next 10 minutes before we go to the other panelist is transforming agriculture through agri startups. Uh, and what I want to cover essentially is what are the startups in agriculture and food sector trying to solve, current status of the ecosystem, what are the innovation themes that we are seeing, how the ecosystem is evolving, and some key learnings for the entrepreneurs who may be there on the call today. So the first and foremost, if you look at the Agritech startup ecosystem, it's about 10-year old, but has really picked up in last 3 to 5 years. And what they're trying to solve is essentially the problems of Indian agriculture across the food value chain, right from pre-production to production to post-harvest. As we all know, that Indian agriculture is highly fragmented. There are about 146 million farmers. The average size of the land holding is 1.08 hectares. 85% of the farmers own less than 2 hectares of land, and they face multiple challenges, be it on the soil quality, measuring soil nutrition, measuring water, soil moisture, and of course, they also face a lot of challenges on the weather side, right? And this is one of the key focus areas for a lot of startups in India, trying to build solutions around it. Second is around mechanization. We all know that farm labor is becoming more and more difficult to get, but sowing at the time of harvest. And even if it is available, it is becoming more and more expensive. So we are seeing a host of mechanization solution, both on the product side as well as the service side, which are emerging. On the post-harvest side, challenges around warehousing, cold chain. I think we all know most of the farmers in India don't have access to them. Most of the warehouses which are built in India are catering to processors and traders, not necessarily to smallholder farmers. Likewise, cold storages. I think most of them still are out of the reach of farmers. There's very little farm level storage, cold storage solutions available. And last but not the least, on the distribution side, how to connect farmer with the market, be it modern trade, be it e-commerce, or be it mom and pop kirana stores or direct to consumer. So I think we have a majority of startups trying to address the entire value chain. On the farmer access, the challenge of farmer in getting good quality inputs, be it seeds, fertilizer, machinery, pesticides, in enabling credit to them. We all know that despite a significant agricultural lending target which government has under priority sector lending, it's almost 15 lakh crores a year. Only 30% of the farmers have access to institutional credit, and 70% of farmers depend on the informal sources of credit, where the cost of capital is as much as 2 to 5% per month. So I think that's another big area of focus, how to make this credit accessible and affordable to majority of farmers in India. And on the demand side, clearly, because there are multiple layers between the farmer and the consumer, 6 to 7 layers are there. How to disintermediate that, how to compress that, and how to help farmers get closer to the customer is one of the big themes for a lot of these startups. Uh, Last point on the data, I think data has been one of the biggest challenge. The whole supply chain, because of multiple layers, because of lack of enough tools, the data is either not available. Even if it is available, it's not accurate. Even if it's accurate, it's not timely. So I think that's one of the big focus areas for a lot of startups, is to build those data tools, both hardware and software, which can collect data and give on insights, not just to farmers, but to the entire value chain, be it the processor, be it the wholesaler, be it the distributor, be it the banker, to help them make decisions. So I think that's one of the big themes that we see coming up in Indian agri tech. Where do we stand? there are about 600 plus Agritech startups and 200 plus food tech startups. I'm not counting food delivery. So and this number was, I would say, 5 years back was probably less than 100. So clearly we are seeing a lot of momentum there. And that really, if you ask me, the inflection point was 2016-17, when I saw high quality entrepreneurs with technology background entering the sector. And very frankly, not most of them had anything to do with agriculture, but they brought a very different mindset. They brought integration of technology. They brought a lot of process orientation, which our supply chain needs. And that has really kind of given the initial fillip to the whole agri-tech ecosystem in India. And once those entrepreneurs came the interesting business models, and then of course came the investors, which was essentially initially dominated by a lot of impact investors. Finally, we are seeing many more names of investors who are investing and looking at Indian agri-tech. We are seeing broad basing of investor base. We are seeing mainstream investors. We are seeing late stage investors. We are seeing foundations. We are seeing a lot of global funds now investing in India. We've seen deals recently from Nespers, from Sequoia, from Excel, from multiple such funds who are looking at Indian agri-tech. The farmer adoption is still a challenge. And in my assessment, it's about 10%. So there's enough headroom to take these solutions to farmers. Only 14 million odd farmers so far have used some kind of agri-tech solution. Another trend that we are witnessing is that a lot of startups in India are going global, and a lot of global startups coming to India. I think that's a big positive news. And another thing, which again I would say is positive, is we are seeing more and more corporate engagement, because a lot of these agri-tech models are not direct to farm. They are B2B2F, business to farmer, and the middle B is usually a corporate. So we are seeing increasing interest of a lot of corporates in the food and agri supply chain, working with these startups, taking these solutions to the farmers. And last but not the least, and I'm very happy to report that the government also is recognizing the role of agri-tech in solving farmers' problem. And we are seeing multiple reforms. We are seeing multiple catalytic efforts by the government at the central level and the state government level to build to integrate agri-tech into agri policies. I think that's a very positive sign. Having said that, I think we need agri-tech policy at a state level and a central level. I'm sure it's going to happen in time to come. Very quickly, what are the themes that we are seeing? The first and foremost, the multiple agri-input e-commerce platform which are coming up, solving farmers' need for inputs. Most of this input selling to farmers is not vanilla selling. It typically is driven by data and advisory, and which the data collected from the farm about soil, about weather, about crop health, and you build an input mix on the basis of that, and then you typically provide credit through some third party or NBFC for selling those inputs, and with the promise of last mile delivery, as in delivering these inputs at the farmer doorsteps. So I think this is one big theme, and we are seeing likes of AgroStar and a Brihad and a Big Heart working on these models. Access to financing, as I mentioned, it's a big opportunity. Agri fintech is going to be much bigger than urban fintech. That's my personal belief. Models around farmer onboarding, credit scoring, risk assessment, risk mitigation, and also loan recovery. I think we'll see a lot of innovations in that. We are already seeing some of them. Farm to fork, I think this is one of the most common theme in the sector, where startups are building demand-driven value chains, capturing demand from either the end consumer or the kirana stores or the e-commerce or the modern trade or institutional buyers, and working backwards to build tech-enabled supply chain with collection centers near the farm and distribution centers near the consumption areas. So I think that's one of the biggest theme, and a lot of capital which has come into the sector. A significant part of that has gone into farm to fork models. Data and artificial intelligence, of course, that's another big opportunity. As I mentioned, It's a combination of hardware and software. Hardware is usually satellite imagery or drones or mobile phones or spectrometers, but I would say, or sensors or ITs, but I would say that is more or less commoditized. The the secret sauce is in the algorithms which these startups are building on the basis of the data that they capture and the data they train, which can throw some interesting insights for the farmers and the rest of the value chain players. Last but not the least, the novel farming is still a very niche category in India, but I would say that will also pick up controlled agriculture, vertical farming, hydroponics, aquaponics. We have few startups here, but I think in post-COVID we saw a lot of these startups mushroom because we saw the need for hyper-local supply chains, and that's where these models fit in very well. So I would say these are the top, let's say, 5 themes in Agritech. When you look at food tech, it's essentially models around direct to consumer. We've seen that in fruits, vegetables, dairy, uh, and along with that, we saw a lot of startups now looking at branding opportunity in staples and fruits and vegetables, which conventionally have been sold as commodities. But I think with more supply chain integration, with better tools for monitoring the supply chain, there's a potential to build brand in this category. Alternative proteins, I think, as we all know, we are a highly protein deficient country. We need to look for new sources of protein, not necessarily as meat substitute, as the Western world has looked at it, but probably as more sources of protein. I think that's another opportunity. Millets, we all know millets is lost during the Green Revolution to wheat and paddy, but I'm seeing a comeback. A lot of new interesting millet startups are coming up, and I think that's one category to watch out for in time to come. And last but not the least, products around herbal products, organic foods. I think that's also that trend kind of got accelerated during COVID times with increasing health consciousness among consumers. Ecosystem, I think there are a lot of guys on this call who have played a very important role in building this up. Of course, Piki and uh, startup oasis and multiple incubators like CICO, AID Anam, Bilgrow, Pusa Krishi, Indigram, Ikriset. I think they did a very important uplifting job getting these startups to validate the models, mentoring them, doing the seed funding, and that's why we are seeing a pretty robust ecosystem today. And of course, there are many programs by the government and the corporates. Uh, I think one area which I believe is still to catch up is village ecosystem, because a lot of these innovation, if it has to reach out to farmers, you need people on the ground, right? The FPOs, the NGOs, the corporates who are working in that region, who have a trust, whom farmer trust, and who can act as a conduit for this innovation to go from agri-tech startups to the farmers. So I think that village level ecosystem is still, I would say, lacking, and we need to work very hard on it. Digital platforms like Agritech, I think that can really transform, access of innovations for the farmers. Because the biggest challenge for a lot of innovators today is the last mile and the first mile access to farmers, or which platform like Agritech can solve for it. These are some of the names, but not comprehensive. I must have missed out on many names. These are the guys who have really worked on building this ecosystem. Funding I talked about, it's the data is still 2019 on this slide, but all I can say that $1 billion has come into the sector in last 10 years. Out of that, $650 million came in last 24 months. So we are clearly seeing an inflection point, and I'm very confident over next 10 years we'll see about a $10 billion investment in Indian agri-tech. So about $1 billion per year, which I think is substantial vis-a-vis what we have seen in the past. And there's a good potential for profitable exit. My personal guess is going to happen between 2022 and 2025. We're going to see few exits, which can potentially attract more capital into the sector. Last slide from my side. What are the learnings? And these learnings are essentially for the entrepreneurs, and it is coming from my work working with a lot of entrepreneurs in this space. I think one thing which will really stand out in this ecosystem is the high degree of resilience among the founders. Most of them are frugal, despite not being funded, being bootstrapped. I've seen a lot of discipline in using the money and creating a unique, sustainable business models. Not necessarily depend on cashbacks and discounts, what we see in urban e-commerce, etc. I think a lot of these models are creating genuine value for the farmer. I think that is one big differentiator. Unit economics, I think it's true for most of the sectors, but what really is different in horticulture or agriculture is the fact that the unit economics has to work across the supply chain, right from farmer to the aggregator to the processor to the distributor to the startup, right? So I think that is extremely critical, and that's one of the, I would say, key founding stones for most of the startups who have scaled because they got the unit economics right. No obsession with fundraising. I think that's extremely critical. I see a lot of startups spending 80% of their time on fundraising and 20% on business models. And I really worry about that. Fortunately, in this space, I haven't seen that kind of obsession. Of course, fundraising is always a need, but I see most of the guys working with farmers, spending time in villages and chasing the customers, and rather than chasing the investors. Team composition, I think that is one area which needs some bit of improvement. I think most of the startups are uh, have founders who come with a lot of tech background, with a lot of experience in places like Infosys or a TCS or a Honeywell or a Cisco or a GE. I think that need to be complemented with experience on the agriculture side, be it agronomy or livestock or dairying, etc. I think that combination is extremely critical for these solutions to scale. And last but not the least, I really like startups who invest almost week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks in a village on a monthly basis. I think that's where uh, I think they evolve, and it's like an obsession, to get to solve for farmers' problem. And you can't look at farmer problems with one dimension. You have to solve for his problems for inputs, for data, for advisory, for credit, for output, for value addition. And that's why it's so important that whatever model you develop has a strong farmer orientation, and likewise a strong consumer orientation, right, for the startups who are on the front end of the supply chain. So these are some of the sort of key learnings in 2 minutes for me, which I have kind of seen by working with a lot of these startups directly. So yeah, with that, in the interest of time, I'll close here. Thank you very much, Atul, and rest of the team, and I look forward to hear from other panelists. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mathur. In fact, providing us a overview of the entire agri-tech and food tech startup scenario. And as you rightly said, that the coming decade will see a boom and surge in these sectors. I myself have some experience of working with the NIAM agribusiness incubation, and we see a lot of creative ideas coming from all the states taken together, and they're really trying to solve the problems of the Indian agriculture across the supply chain. And one thing that you have pointed out, that the rural ecosystem, uh, there is a need to engage with the FPOs, local community NGOs, to make it a success in long run. So thank you very much. And now I would request Mr. Chintan Bakshi, who is CEO of Startup Oasis and a partner incubation at CII CEO. He brings with him experience of starting and scaling new ventures and tech startup companies, primarily in rural and bottom of the pyramid space, specializing in rural distribution and technology commercialization. He is also an alumnus of IIT Delhi and IIM Bangalore. So over to you, Mr. Bakshi.
Thank you, Atul.
You're on mute.
And yeah, am I audible?
Yes.
Fine.
Yeah. So, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for having me as part of this esteemed panel. So, I'm really going to focus on a couple of things, and I think Hemendra has set the context very well and given the overall structure landscape of the agri startup ecosystem. So what I'm going to do, and that really comes from my experience of working more at the regional level in Rajasthan, Gujarat, and we are also now planning to start something in Madhya Pradesh, hopefully Assam, etc. So what I'm going to do is basically look at the agri startup ecosystem from two perspectives, and to a certain extent, Hemendra talked about it. One is the agri tech, and The second is the food tech. So, as per my understanding of working with very early stage regional startups in Rajasthan and Gujarat, in fact, to a certain extent in MP also, what we have seen is that while the agri-tech startups are more horizontal, in a way, they are perhaps relevant for various kinds of crops, various kinds of sectors, etc. within agri. The more regional startups tend to focus on specific local problems and largely the market connect sort of issues. And I'll illustrate this through the means of a few examples. I'm also trying to look at the context in which we are talking about the Assam sort of a theme. And if we have to sort of build the agri ecosystem in Assam, what is it that we need to focus on? So while the agri-tech piece is more national in flavor, and in a region like Assam, MP, etc., while there will be a few agri-tech startups, but their domain will largely be national. But the focus of a lot of these regional startups needs to really be on what Hemendra also talked about, whether it's working with NGOs, whether it is working with FPOs, the rural infrastructure, making sure that the unit economics at the farmer level makes sense, and essentially basically working with a set of agri products and trying to build a value chain around it. And these agri food products, horticulture, dairy, whatever it is, will vary from state to state. So therefore, there will be a very regional flavor to a lot of these startups, which are really trying to bridge that market gap through the means of building relevant and regional business models. Perhaps the funding that some of these startups may be able to attract will also be different. A lot of them will actually be more like SMEs. We may want to call them startups. They will, of course, be building some innovative business models, but they may not scale up in a way in which a pure tech startup would scale up. Perhaps some of them may not be VC fundable also. They may want to go for debt or these kind of hybrid kind of funding options. So it's really a new category of startups / innovative SMEs, or they are sometimes also called high growth businesses. There are some new terminologies coming up. These are startups which may not scale up significantly beyond the regions in which they are operating, but they may become 50 crore, 100 crore kind of profitable businesses. So I'm really going to focus more on that because, I think if we have to look at transforming agriculture in the regions, while there's a certain horizontal platform role that the agri-tech startups will play, but we would need hundreds, I'm really talking about hundreds per state of such high growth businesses which are tackling local issues, building local ecosystems, trying to get local NGOs, FPOs, etc., together to build a 50 crore, 100 crore sort of a business. And I'm going to take a few examples to illustrate my point. So we have a company that we have worked with as part of a program that we did in CICO in Startup Oasis, which works around jaggery. It's obviously a traditional food, but it's consumed in a very specific kind of a manner. It's kind of not branded. It goes through. It's almost sold in bulk. So these folks have kind of done some innovations around jaggery. They have made some sachets. They've tried to promote this in cafes, and on the back end, they have worked significantly with the jaggery producers, because if you have to sort of sell to a 5-star hotel or whatever, which will have their standards, they would require some hygiene standards at the back end. So that's how they were able to manage it. They were able to work with a few non-profits which were working with some of these jaggery farmers, and these tend to be a lot of these folks tend to be those who are buying sugarcane, etc., from the smaller farmers in Western UP, etc. So they built this entire ecosystem around jaggery, and then through some innovative packages, processing, etc., they were able to link it to large customers. So that's, for example, one example that and jaggery could be replaced by other relevant products when we go to other geographies. Hemendra also talked about millets and a lot of stuff which can be done around that. We also have a few startups in the dairy, and because we are fundamentally operating largely in Gujarat, Rajasthan, and dairy livestock is a large agri subsector. So we have startups who are working with the likes of uh, camels and trying to build dairy supply chain around it. Again, they have to tackle the ecosystems. They have to work with local non-profits to build credibility, so that farmers have that trust that they are able to do whatever is required to supply milk to them, and then there is some processing which happens, packaging, and then a forward linkage. Potentially a small or a medium business which gets developed around camel milk. Similarly, Rajasthan, for example, has a very large number of indigenous cattle. All these A2 sort of milk. While if you want A2 milk in Delhi, you'll have to maybe create a farm around it, and you'll have to get these cows. These cows are available in Rajasthan. I mean, not much of hybridization has happened. It has happened, but let's say in the western parts of Rajasthan, it hasn't. So it's available naturally. Similarly, like in Northeast, I'm sure there'll be a lot of areas where organic, like in Sikkim, etc., where organic produce is available there. So through the rural infrastructure building, through FPO connects, through NGO connects, if some of these agri-tech technologies could be integrated, if some sort of a supply chain can be built, so that's really the sector which I think is something that I see growing. And the state governments need to play a significant role, because as I mentioned, that these may not be startups which will scale up significantly across India. The examples that I gave, Jaggery is probably going to work well in Western UP. The A2 milk in the kind of model that I'm talking about is perhaps only going to work in Western Rajasthan. If you go to other regions, you may not find such small farmers having one or two desi brands, etc. So they will be very, very contextual. But these are the ones who are going to leverage technology, leverage business models, leverage social infrastructure, leverage connections to really bring the additional farm income that we are talking about to farmers, and build value-added products and linkages to the markets. As I also mentioned, a lot of them, and herbal, etc., is also part of it. A lot of them may need some innovative models of financing. I mean, the conventional VC may or may not work. So that's where I think state governments need to step in. A lot of state governments have started setting up state-specific funds, perhaps in collaboration with the with state venture capital funds, etc. I mean, there are conversations happening, but more needs to happen. There are, of course, organizations like Caspian, Ananya, Samunati who do debt funding to a certain extent. But I think early stage funding is required, in this sector. While through some of the programs that we do at CICO and Startup Oasis, we are able to fund some of them, but it's still a drop in the ocean. Much more needs to be done, and much more needs to be done at the state level. So I think with that, I'll just kind of finish my presentation. I mean, that's really what I really wanted to talk about. How we can build regional and state level ecosystems to build these kind of sectoral high growth businesses to leverage the agri-tech infrastructure, etc. That's getting built. Thank you very much for having me here. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Bakshi. In fact, you have rightly said many of the typical startup parameters these innovative ideas doesn't fit into, and they don't get funding platforms also. In fact, many of the cases need to be analyzed on the basis of their social impact more than their probably commercial viability. So a lot of these things are being addressed. It's a work in progress, and as we move forward, as you mentioned, the local state governments and local self governments have to play a bigger role to boost local entrepreneurships and startups. And thank you once again. Now we have Mr. William Hosek, CEO of WeatherStream UK and Orbital Microsystems India. And he is a senior consultant and business development executive with 23 years of experience in US, South Asia, Far East, and Oceania regions. And in his current capacity, he is directing the development of innovative and affordable space-based remote sensing systems that will deliver unprecedented coverage of weather data for use in the risk mitigation, agriculture, transportation industries. So over to you, Mr. William. You are on mute. Please unmute yourself.
That's the new saying for for 2020 and 21. You're on mute. Well, thank you very much for having me and allowing me to talk a little bit about our company. And there's a lot that's been said here that we definitely have encountered. And over the years, I've worked with many companies trying to get over some of these hurdles. And of course, we come from the space and data point of view. So we come from one of the hardest areas to invest in and one of the easiest areas to invest in. And it's always been an interesting road recently. So let me go ahead and share my screen here. All right. So I'll be talking about the weather risk aspects, how we view them, and what we're doing to change the way data is accessed and how it is created. We are really focused on democratizing weather data and bringing it into the market at a place where the users have a say in what data they need and what data is created. So just to give some highlights, we've seen numbers as high as 1 million farmers every year being forced to leave the land because of challenges in the growing cycle, in yield, all driven a lot by weather. And one of the comments made about access to credit, we see being able to have high temporal yield models and weather models can be an additional way that farmers can gain access to credit, as well as insurance. I highlight the fuel savings here because cold chain is a critical part of the agricultural ecosystem. And there is a direct relationship between catastrophic weather events and the access to fresh food, as well as the ability for farmers and commodity brokers to get their food to market. And the last bit is the insurance. Insurance has led the revolution in so many of the large-scale economic changes in the world. And we absolutely see insurance being critical to the stability of farming and agriculture throughout the entire value chain. What it all comes down to is the real effects of weather create shortages in food production, loss of income and property, the increased stress on urban infrastructures, as well as a reduction in the quality of life and health, and ultimately a loss of the investments and capital that is necessary in any business. The weather business and the access to weather it's a broken value chain right now. It's predominantly the data creation side has been held by governments, and these are multi-billion-dollar programs that require years to get into place and are really built from a science point of view and an infrastructure protection, not from the actual side of consumers and the businesses that are looking for better information. Because of this, there are massive gaps in the coverage of data, creates inconsistent data, a lot of competition between countries in how they collect data, how they make data available. And ultimately, at the end of the day, it doesn't meet the needs of the end users and the customers. So we really see weather today. I mean, it's there, but we compare the access to weather data, how the internet was in 1995. And I know when I see the Yahoo screen, it gives me the chills when I think about how far exchange of information has come from there. So what is it that OMS is doing? What we're doing is we are providing high temporal weather data in a format through our platform, which is a marketplace-based platform, in order to bring our unique space observations to the direct users so that they can create the knowledge that they need to do their businesses in near real time. So we are flying our own fleet of satellites. We have our first one is on orbit. We have 2 additionals flying next year. The goal is actually to have a total of 6 by next year. And at the end, have a fleet of 50 of our satellites, creating a global temperature, humidity, and precipitation data set that is refreshed every 15 minutes for every spot on the Earth. And this is what we see really changing the way weather is used in real time across the value chain in agriculture. Another look at it. So what you see here is actually the first private microwave observation of a typhoon. This is Typhoon Hagibis. What we do is we take our unique data and sensor and algorithms. We prepare that so that it is easily fused and can be handled by our customers. And then on our platform, you're able to rapidly discern the data point that you are looking for in a near real-time fashion. How we do this is the platform does function as a marketplace. So you will have what we call blocks or modules that are able to do different tasks, such as crop yield analysis, monitoring, pricing, weather models, flood models, and you'll be able to connect them so that you can have automated flows. One major difference of how our platform is designed is we are looking to also support the other small businesses that are out there, the other agricultural analytics companies. They can host their modules or their software and tools on the platform, and those can be combined with other providers to create new and unique types of observations. So we are truly a marketplace. We are bringing the data and the tools directly to the customers in a way that they have control over the intelligence and knowledge that they're generating. I liked hearing the comment of farm to fork. I did kind of steal a little bit of this, but we see it actually from space to fork, because the challenge of observation is getting that persistent look in a way that is consistent and is safe from the exact environment that is the challenge that we're trying to observe. So what is it that we're observing? We're creating temperature, humidity, precipitation data sets. We're allowing those to then be driven in a real-time manner, so you can actually have parametric type of decisions, and that the analytics ready data is at hand immediately. So this allows for the total crop cycle management capabilities of tools. It also allows for a next generation of insurance products and methodologies. It ultimately, at the end, solidifying and stabilizing the social and market side of the returns. We really do see this as a double bottom line delivery to the market. So we are delivering on the social side for food stability, but we are also making businesses sustainable so they can continue to have that sustainable food pipeline. So I'm going to talk about a couple ways we see how we are going to be able to engage with industry and farmers directly. The thing I like to highlight is that it is the agricultural business is a ecosystem. it goes from the farmer all the way to the consumer, and in the middle are all the people doing the things necessary to make farming and harvesting a reality. So we always have to remember that we have to look at it from both sides. What does the farmer need? What does the consumer need? What do the enabling businesses in the middle need? And that's why we built our platform to be very, very flexible, so it can meet the needs of all of those sections. So the thing about weather is it does interact throughout the entire life cycle. And I'll show you exactly how that does here in the next slide, because a lot of people, well, how does it tie in with blending? How does it tie in with the actual planning and for supplies? But what we deliver is we bring in the multiple data sets, and then we enable the apps and tools for both the farmers, but also the insurance company, the suppliers, the banks, so that they can create new ways to plan and be proactive and service the farmer in a much more proactive and near real-time method. And on this side, I just quickly highlight kind of where these different partners lie. And weather is critical in the verticals of each of these industries, as well as horizontally when you're looking at how it supports agriculture. But at the end of the day, we are creating a living marketplace so that it can make changes with the time and the technology and the needs of our customers. It adds transparency, ease of access, and more control over access to the weather data. It truly is making the data and tools accessible. An example of something that would be completely new through near real-time weather observations, that have never been had before, is actually a dynamic hail insurance product. This is one of the biggest gaps that we see in the world. And right now, it's very, very difficult to get hail insurance, yet it is one of the biggest challenges that's out there that can only be solved when you do have high temporal resolution. And just to show an example of how it would work within the platform, if you can imagine each one of these steps is its own module that you're putting together. You're having a monitoring stage. You have a forecast stage. You also have an event anomaly identification process. Then you will be monitoring the event in near real time. Post, you can very rapidly utilizing STAR, NDVI, microwave, quickly assess the event, how bad it was, and then allow for rapid adjustment so that the farmers can get back on their feet and get growing the very next day. So you don't have to wait for weeks and weeks and weeks. So I just want to end here with, the agricultural ecosystem is changing, and we need to be prepared. The old weather models are not working as well as they used to. We're seeing a lot of anomalies. So the high temporal data is going to be very, very critical to this. My advice to other startups out there is engage early with your customers. Try to use the highest refresh rate data you can get your hands on. This is so important and is really the new dynamic changer. Leverage AI and ML. There's a lot going on in here that let the machine run a million iterations. Still the Mark 1 eyeball is still one of the best ways to recognize patterns, but the new advances in artificial intelligent machine learning really help. Focus on your core. Don't try to do everything. We're not the experts in crop monitoring. What we are is the experts in creating and gathering the data and supplying the data. So we're always looking for partners to work with as well as other startups. Don't let your ego get in the way of your goal, and be engaged in part of the development process. And I cannot stress these last bits enough. I grew up in a rural area. Businesses, you must respect and learn from the farmers. The two smartest people on the planet are farmers and fishermen. And you can learn more in 15 minutes sitting with them than you can in a PhD program. So respect and listen to them. Understand the farm. Get out there, put your hands in the dirt, see what they're going through, know what the challenges are. Don't assume you know what the solution is. I do not assume. Nobody in our group, in our team, assumes that we know the answers. Be local, engage locally, with a mindset of scaling and being able to supply that. And lastly, be accessible. Pick up the phone, answer the email, answer the text. It's everybody is in this together, and you need to be accessible and part of the solution. So with that, I'll go ahead and turn the I'll release my control of the screen. And thank you very much for the opportunity to present a little bit of what OM is doing.
Thank you, Mr. Hoshak. In fact, don't assume that we know all the answers. It's a good thing to accept, but yeah, definitely rightly said. Better weather intelligence can definitely help in better planning and risk management. So thank you once again. Now I think it's a relatively decent time, 7 o'clock there.
Yeah, it's almost the normal time.
Okay. Now, our next speaker is Dr. Ramesh Mithal, who is Director of National Institute of Agricultural Marketing, Autonomous Institute under Ministry of Agriculture and Farmers Welfare. And I also have the opportunity to work closely with him, and he's doing a lot of work in the agri startup space. And he's currently the chairperson of NIAM Center of Innovation, Entrepreneurship and Skill Development, NIAM Agri Incubation Center, NIAM Center of Public-Private Partnership, and NIAM Center for Agri Logistics, and NIAM Center for Agri Business Management and Education. And he's also chief mentor for the RKVY project to develop agri startups at IIT Kharagpur, National Rice Research Institute, Cuttack, Bihar Agriculture University, Bhagalpur, and Jobner Agricultural University, Jobner, Jaipur. And beside this, he has a lot of international exposure also. So with these words, I would request Dr. Mittal to please share his views.
Thank you, Atulji. I'm just going through with all the distinguished speakers, and I really agreed upon what like this ecosystem is developing in India. It is going very fast. Now, here I would like to say something a little bit different. Mr. Mathur has already quoted about the high business volume startups in this country, but the Ministry of Agriculture and Farmer Welfare has focused for the rural entrepreneurs, focused basically on agri entrepreneurs, I should say, like the farmers and their wards and other stakeholders. So I would like to say, like agriculture was earlier livelihood in this country, although right now you may say some portion still it is a livelihood, but now slowly time has changed and gradually it has become to the agriculture livelihood to agri business basically. So when we talk about this agri business, then time come to this agri startups and all, and then that is why the Ministry of Agriculture and Farmer Welfare has started this flagship program in the name of RKVY Raftar. That is known as a Rashtriya Krishi Vikas Yojana. The scheme name is Raftar, and this is only 2-year-old. Technically, it is 2-year-old. Otherwise, it is 3-year-old program. And although in this country, like the many other agencies are also working, like Department of Science and Technology, they have their TBIs, and Niti Aayog has their Atal incubation centers, and MSMEs also they have their incubation center, and many kind of other formats are working. But if you talk about the focused on agri incubation center, then I feel it is the only scheme which is right now it is benefited to the farmer and the other people also. Now this scheme has some good thing, and this is quite popular in India, and ministry has 5 knowledge partner, and NIAM is one of them, and 4 other knowledge partners are working, and it is divided into the other states as well as the institutions. So we people are catering, like Mr. Atulji has already rightly said, West Bengal and Odisha, Bihar, Jharkhand and Rajasthan. Now the important thing is basically the process of this program, like why it is very important, because it is focused on rural entrepreneurship, rural farmers basically. And Mr. Atulji is already said about that, like this is focused on social impact. Now if you look at then a startup ecosystem, basically all the startup ecosystem is looking after basically this innovation and feasibility and viability also. But this has third component which is very important. It is focused on social impact also. In this agriculture, until unless you don't have this focus impact, I mean social impact, you cannot grow with this by taking all the stakeholder in the confidence. So the scheme is pretty good, and if you look at, like, in 2 year it has taken quantum jump. All over India, more than 29 institutions are working. Ratherly, I should say, like, the 29 states are working to promote this scheme. And somehow this is a little bit typical also, but traditional also. For example, if you look at this state like Assam, the selection process of this program is very easy. Like, anyone can join. It doesn't matter whether he's illiterate or illiterate, or formal education, without any kind of education, or highly educated also. And no age bar. I mean, the person with 18-year age or person maybe the 65-year of the age can join this program. And the important point is basically like, there is no entry fee. Everything is almost free. Good mentors are available around the India. And a very good technology based agriculture institutions are working, where the person can join and they can fulfill their dream by uh, knowing the technology related issues, I mean problems, basically any kind of problems what they feel, they can join and they can have. It is not only the grant, but other technical things are also available. For example, like marketing, human resource, operation management, technology related issues, patent, and other kind of issues like GI, and all kind of things which are covered in this program. And the important thing is, if you look at the other kind of startups in this country, I don't know, but otherwise you will not find the grant. But in this program, like for the seed stage startup, uh, maximum ceiling is like 25 lakh rupees, and in the idea stage, like 5 lakh rupees are uh, the ceiling basically. So these are the, like, the structure. I just want to tell the structure. Then again, the many companies, I mean many kind of startups are working, that is like Agritech and food tech and supply chain, cold chain. For example, like use of IT, use of blockchain, use of IoT, use of AI, that is upcoming area. And in agriculture, these are so like buzzword. Earlier it was buzzword for the agriculture, but now many people, and very surprising, like very highly qualified people from IITs, for NITs, for IIMs, and even from Harvard, they are coming back to this country and they are joining this program, and simultaneously they are getting the grant also, and they are very happy. But this segment is from the lower side, as Mr. Mathur has told. It is not the high volume segment, but this segment is for the lower side. Like, the first generation entrepreneurs are coming in. They don't have this capital. So basically, this grant is helping to them, and later on they are gradually they are developing. So the 85% portion has been given them to as a grant, and 15% they have to add from their pocket. So scheme is very lucrative and very attractive. People are moving ahead. And I just want to tell you some examples how people are working. For example, like many online platform, if you look at the new agriculture reforms which has come into the place, the new e-commerce platforms are required to cater the farmers as well as the middlemen, stakeholders and the companies. So the online platform, many startups has proven their capacity. Then this warehouse management, this startups has already proved themselves. Even some polymer, like I'll explain you. One startup, they have introduced or innovative polymer which was developed by the using of the agriculture waste, like the peel of oranges, peel of bananas, or something like that. And the boy is a computer science graduate, and very remarkable work they have done it. And they are getting orders from Turkey and many kind of places, and they got a lot of awards also. Like the Japan has given them fellowship, Netherlands given them award, President Award and CI Award, many kind of awards they have already got. So such projects are very, very innovative, and they have a lot of scope also. And I believe such startups are going to convert in a unicorn near future. So like dairy industry again, Mr. Already some speaker has already said about this A2 milk. I think Chintan Bakshi has already said about this A2 milk. So many kind of such startup has already taken place. Maybe they are not working in milk, but they are working in ghee also. So and forest produce collection, like we have one startup where they have collected some forest produce, that is custard apple, and the pulp is very valuable, and they are selling to the ice cream industry, bakery industry, and they are growing, and they are helping to the tribal people in Udaipur district. So that is again very, very innovative idea, and they are going like air purifying plants which are marketable. One girl from the Kerala, and she is developed that startup, and now she is working around the country, and they are selling very in a good volume. So FPO support related startups are also like fisheries related, aquaculture, aquaponics, hydroponics, value chain, value addition, even some superfood basically like chia seed, quinoa. For example, this makana process in Bihar. The 80% makana is grown in Bihar only itself, but the processing technique was very traditional. So the farmer was basically, I mean, they have to spend a lot of time. So they have that machine was introduced by our one this startup, and very interestingly, this machine can do the work instead of 30 days. The machine can complete the work within 2 days, and the machine cost is somewhere like the 50,000 rupees. So this is very innovative, and the machine is again he is referring to the for the patent purpose also. So these are the example where we people are working, and very interesting. Last year under this project, more than 300 agri startups has been taken place, and the grant has been given to them. Now this year again, almost same number is going to be there. And this scheme, it is this scheme has beauty of like the two component. One is like the idea stage, where the entrepreneur can get only 5 lakh rupees to develop their idea. So no prototype is required, and no startup is required even. So many I mean talented student, they are not looking for the job, and they are working around the country. They are studying, and some potential entrepreneurs also. So they don't have such kind of corpus to spend to go for the experiment, to do the research work. But in this scheme they are getting, and after that they are converting into the startup where the 25 lakh rupees are available. So I just want to focus on the Assam also, because we people are talking about the transforming agriculture in Assam basically right now, and program is going on in Assam. As a World Bank project, our organization has conducted one study that is known as a ASCP, which was Assam State Agriculture Competitiveness Project, and that was funded by the World Bank, and implemented by the Assam government. So I just want to say, in that program, we have developed more than 75 agribusiness studies, and few of them I have developed myself. So that is why I just remember, and I would like to quote here, kind of potential which Assam has to develop such kind of startups. I just want to recall the kind of potential Assam and this seven sister area has. Number one is Erica nut. Erica nut is a tree where the nuts are available.
Dr. Mithal, in the interest of time, I would request you to please.
Sure. I will take only 1 minute and I'll.
Sure.
Okay. So the few products I will tell about this Erica nut, milk, and contract farming for potato and value-added product, and this freshwater fishing, freshwater fish, horticulture, medicinal aromatic plant, and this rubber and sericulture. Now these sectors have lot of scope. For example, rubber plantation is going on. For example, sericulture is going. Now such startups are required to put attention. Now since we people are working as a pan India basis, we people are getting entrepreneurs from all over India. Like 20 states we right now we are catering, and we are getting entrepreneurs from Assam also. And one thing I would like to quote, and then I'll sum up. Erica nut is a very common produce which was cultivated in Assam. But you will not find a single unit in Assam which is producing value added Erica nut. Each and every nut is going outside of Assam. maybe Kolkata, maybe Indore, maybe Chennai for the value addition purpose. Now, such kind of high value commodities are required to put their attention to start the startups. With these words, I would like to say thank you for this great opportunity to speak about it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Mithal. In fact, these are wonderful schemes. In fact, we have funded one or two cases from Assam also, if I'm not
Right,
wrong.
absolutely right,
In
absolutely.
fact, there was a mustard oil
Yes, mustard oil. Yeah,
processing
yeah,
case, and in fact, that was
right.
the day I discovered that there is a mustard in Assam. Otherwise, I thought it's all in Rajasthan only. Thank you, Dr. Mithal.
You're
Now,
welcome.
our next speaker for experience sharing by Agri Startup is Mr. Arindam Hajarika, who is founder of Arohan Foods. And Mr. Hajarika is a banker turned agriculturalist. And he was heading Kotak Mahindra Bank in Guwahati. And he left as chief manager in 2013 and founded Arohan Foods, a premier food and livestock startup from Northeast. And he is also a member of FICCI Assam State Council and leading skill development, entrepreneurship, and capacity building initiatives. And he is founder of Northeast Entrepreneurs Alliance, member of Indian Council of Food and Agriculture Working Group on NEM. Over to you, Mr. Hajarika.
Uh, Good evening, everyone. Good evening, gentlemen. Good morning, William, on the other side of the world. Although I'm here for experience sharing, how much time do I have, Atulji? 10 minutes,
Yeah.
more or less. So after hearing all of you, I also like to tell a couple of other things, especially with the perspective of Northeast. One is, I agree absolutely when you say that farmers and fishermen are the two more people from whom we can learn a lot. They've been in the field, they've been in the water, and their life depends on it. So the learning that all agri entrepreneurs, whoever is watching this podcast, should take away from this is that there is more for us to learn from them than for them to learn for us. When you talk about the ecosystem, we've been lucky. One of the lucky ones, I think we started off in 2013. We've had assistance from Omnivore Partners. We've tied up with Eco, the Dutch organization, and also Ananya Finance. So that way is being one of the first, we had the disadvantage of there being no ecosystem as such of agri startups in the Northeast, but we also were one of the first to then get associated with VC funds and funding agencies. The other things that is very important with Northeast, because I'll speak from my experience in Northeast, is farmer per se in the Northeast is very different from what we imagine a farmer for rest of India. The farms, most of the livestock across Northeast are tended to by women, where there's a lot of demographic change happening, where the boys and the young men are in mainland India doing other jobs. Most of the farm labor in many cases is women. So engaging with women, services for women, services for women farmers, it's slightly different from what we understand in the traditional segment in India. Recently, we've had cases in India where farm tech, ag tech companies have raised amounts of 30 million and above. When you translate that to the northeastern perspective, most states agricultural departments don't have budgets that big. So when you talk about scale, when you talk about size, although Northeast alone is around 3 million people, 30 million people, sorry, it's the size of Spain in terms of population. In terms of agri productivity, in terms of the money that circulates in agriculture, it's around a few commodities. One is tea. The other, surprisingly, is livestock, which is your pigs. Pigs across Northeast is a $2 billion industry. It is almost at par with tea, but it's completely fragmented. It's completely decentralized. This is something that we started off with, a value chain around swine. Our approach was learn first, because as Atulji has said, we are from the corporate background. I'm from a bank. My partner is from Tata Chemicals. When we started in livestock, we spent the first year and a half working with scientists, so ICR, Gadwasu in Ludhiana, CTCRI down south, and Assam Agricultural University. So we work closely with these organizations to pick up the skills ourselves, to pick up into ground, and that's when we started. We started off as a food processing company, distributing our products across India. So at one network from Chennai down south to Andaman. But like you said, cold chain is an issue. Logistics again from Northeast has always been an issue, and there's a paradox in Northeast is that although we produce some of the most high quality products in the country, contrary to popular belief, they're not always cheap. I mean, the raw materials for any kind of value addition in the Northeast many a times is quite expensive compared to what you have for a similar farm of manufacturing. One of the reason there is also that the size of holdings are small and all of us are micro crops. We are multi croppers, sorry. So coming back to our experience, although we started off as a food processing company, what we're doing now across the last 2 or 3 years is diversifying into a lot of the value chains apart from livestock. So some of our recent work again surrounds around the data that's absolute lack of data that's there around agricultural produce, horticultural produce around Northeast. So presently I'm in a place called Pasighat. It's in the eastern side of Arunachal Pradesh. Arunachal Pradesh is again a contrarian to rest of Northeast. Here, the land holding per person is around 17 to 18 square kilometers. So here people don't measure, my land holding in terms of hectares or bighas is basically kilometers. So they have orchards, which is 20 kilometers, and you can have ginger plantation, which is basically I have ginger plantation from this side of the river till the next river. That's how they measure lands here. The challenge here in terms of most of the Agritech startups that work in rest of India and translating that to here is many of these cases are zero impact agriculture, where they really are not looking for fertilizers, they're not really looking for pest control services. What they're looking for is marketing. Now, market again, the challenge comes here in terms of technology is the data. So data, the timing of the market, the timing of harvest, and then getting the product to the market at the right temperature is some of the challenges that we are trying to solve. And the space is so big because we have 30 million, that this is the space problem who are following this to also look into. I think across Northeast, we try and oversimplify the word transformation, where everybody wants to do something dramatic. Like you rightly mentioned, one of the speakers, that in Northeast, startups need to look at the mode of working as an SME, where you are a sustainable business of 50, 100 crores. And there was a FICCI report, which I think came out together with PwC somewhere around 2018, where you had found out that every rural startup engages 26 farmers. So it's actually more important than opening a bank or opening a small government office in a location. A rural startup in that location, if you can engage 26 families, which is roughly 100 to 120 people, and you don't be funded in year one or year two, like you said, an SME model where a 50 crore or 100 crore turnover is sustainable and you're not having huge cost. I think that is some of the models that we should also look at across Northeast. Unfortunately, what we see, because I've worked with the ecosystem for the last 7-8 years, being one of the older people in the startup, the startup nomenclature, is that unlike I've heard from you guys during the presentation, where people are spending time in the field, spending time with the farmers, here we have a prevalence of people running after funds. I mean, if you'd have called this conference easy funding for agri startups in Northeast, I think you'd have 3 times the amount of people following this. So that, I think, somewhere some of the young people, young kids have lost that, because they see all the stories of people raising 10 million, 20 million, 30 million down south in Bangalore and Pune. But they also forget that the average farm sizes there are much bigger. We can't even think of mechanizing our farms, because everybody is doing 5 to 6 crops, and the terrain is such that you need to have custom machines for some of the farms across Northeast. So some of the challenges are different. And a person in the IT sector can probably sit in Bangalore and he can think of making solutions for another farmer in Pune, because the conditions are similar. But for, I think, solutions pertaining to Northeast, we really need people to sit here, spend at least 6 months to a year on the ground, because the opportunities are huge, the opportunities are different, and the challenges are different. And I'll not take a lot of time. What I'll do is we have a group for this, so I'll share my email ID on that. I'd really like to work in future with everyone. I'm sitting in Arunachal, and that gives us a lot of we sit in one of the highest landslide prone areas of the country, and I think there is some learning that we can also have from your. So I think that's more or less the message, that there could be some questions. So I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Arvind. Definitely, there is a lot of potential. And I would now request Mr. Bishwajit Chakravarti, if there are any questions, he is present there at Bokaghat Stadium.
Thank you, Atul. I think we are running a bit late. A limited number of questions. I can see Mr. Baljeet here. He has a question, I believe. Would you like to? Yeah. After Mr. Baljeet.
So thank you, speakers. Those were very nice presentations and inputs. I am Baljeet Singh. I represent World Bank financed Assam Agribusiness and Rural Transformation Project. So I have two questions, one for Hemendra Mathurji and the another for William Hossack. So question for Hemendra Mathurji is, we talked about that village level ecosystem is missing, particularly for FPOs. But then while working with FPOs, we also realized that the sustainability of FPOs is a question. As long as the support of the Resource Institute is there, they sustain. But once the support of the Resource Institute ceases, then they collapse. And there are various reports which say that 40, 45, 46% of the FPCs collapse in first 10 years of their existence. So can we think of an incubator for the FPCs themselves? So is that possible? And I think that should be possible because FPCs in that sense are companies and incubators are for, you know, enterprises or companies or startups. So I would request Hemendraji's thoughts on that. Second question to William Hossack is about the crop insurance, weather-based crop insurance. So for UK, I would like to know on a percentage basis, let us say out of 100 farmers in a village, how many farmers avail the weather-based crop insurance? And out of those 100, out of the farmers who avail weather-based crop insurance, what is the number of claims filed, number of claims requested? And out of those, how many claims are settled timely? This is just to make a comparison between, you know, India and UK. So thank you. So first, Hemendraji can answer, and then William Hossack. Thank you.
Thank you. No, it's a valid thought and a good question. We definitely need a lot of effort on building capacity for FPOs. They need as much training as any other startup would. And I agree that, you know, of course there are 7,000 FPOs on paper, but in terms of actual FPOs are operating, I think they're far less. And they need a lot of training, they need a lot of education. And I think what they need is essentially what a lot of agri-tech startups are solving, you know, access to good inputs, access to markets, access to warehousing, access to mechanization, data advisory. So I find the startup ecosystem and the FPO ecosystem very symbiotic. If they can somehow come together, it can really do wonders. I think there's one element of cultural sort of challenges which I see, because most startups come with a very different profile and FPOs come from a different profile. So probably there is some challenge in connecting them together, and I think that's where what Chintan said, what Rameshji said, that, you know, we need to build more of a catalytic effort. You know, it's not going to happen on its own. It may happen, but it may take years and years for that to happen. And I clearly see need for policy. I need see for incubation, dedicated incubation. But I think it can't be a sort of a conventional incubation. You know, it has to be incubation which is, it could be like a 15-day course for FPOs which can be done, right? Which can sort of educate them on what's happening. You know, probably they don't even know. Forget, you know, working with startups and taking on these innovation. Probably they're not even aware what's happening. I know one such center or one such institution which has done it in Maharashtra. It's a Sahyadri Farm, which is of course one of the most successful FPOs in the country. They have incubated multiple startups and other smaller FPOs in the region. So I think that's a template. You know, whether it's successful or not, of course, one can question. But I think at least an attempt has been made. But clearly, I would strongly endorse the idea of incubation model for FPOs, and you know, and also in some ways connect startups through that program, you know, and bring them together under one roof and figure out how they solve for it. And I'm part of National Association for FPOs. I'm happy to take this idea and see if there are sponsors who can fund it.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, Mr. William can answer the.
Yeah, so I would actually say rather than look at the UK, I would look at the United States, because the UK is actually a very small agricultural market. But we can do a better comparison, I think, when we look between the United States and India. So when you asked how many have coverage, 1 out of 100 in the United States, it's probably about 70% have insurance on their crops, and obviously, it makes sense that as the crops gets, as the cropland gets smaller, as the farm gets smaller, you have less and less people insured. So this is something I think I'm going to talk about after I answer all this very quickly, how I see we can change this and the applications in India. Of those coverages, the industry standard is about 18% will trigger. So basically 1 in 5 coverages are going to trigger. Now, the way to balance this is leveraging parametric type of insurances, which right now are still relatively new in India. I'd love to see GIC and AIC and the government get behind a true parametric system that allows the open market to work on those. The other big way I see to get more farmers insured is by doing micro insurance. So rather than trying to insure each farmer directly, you insure at the village level. Pool those farmers and let the village manage that insurance, just like you do with micro lending, but do it with insurance. And this is a way to get the quarter hectare size farmer covered the same as the farmer who has 10 hectares or 50 hectares. So, with that, I'll turn it over.
Thank you. I think we have one more question here. Yeah. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity to stand up here and ask my question. My first question is to Dr. Ramesh Mithal. So I would like to know about ornamental horticulture and the scope of growing that as a business. And the second question is to Mr. Arindam Hazarika. Sir, as you yourself are from the Northeast region, and you told about you were able to tell us about certain challenges that we face over here. My question to you is, like, we have a lot of raw materials and agriculture products available over here, but the main challenge that we face is when it comes to technology and technology, machinery, and also skilled labor to produce it into a finished product. So if you could throw some light onto it. Thank you.
Shall I begin?
Yeah, please.
Okay. Now, you have asked for this ornamental horticulture related the scope for the startups. Yes. Last year, we have developed more than 59 startups, and out of that, like 39 has got funding from the government of India. This year, now we people have selected 66 startups, and surprisingly, for this horticulture ornamental related startups are 2 to 3%. So there are a lot of scope. Like as I already told you, this air pollution related some ornamental plants have been selected by one entrepreneur, and they are selling, and as well as they are providing on rental also. So such kind of startups are coming up, And I believe it is a very good opportunity. And if someone has the good idea, as I told you, the three things are required. One is innovation. A second is project should be viable and feasible. And third is it should have social impact. If three things are able to fulfill, then one can apply for this startup also. And you can apply anywhere. Like this five institutions are as a knowledge partner working, and they can accept the application on the pan India basis, which includes this Assam State Agriculture University in Guwahati. And otherwise, like NIAM, you can apply to NIAM also, or anyone, any five knowledge partners. And if you want to apply locally, then near Assam, like the Bihar and other states are also, like West Bengal, they are also eligible to keep your applications. I believe you got your answer.
Yeah, thank you. Arindam,
Yeah, I'll just quickly break it up into two parts. One is your technology. I think you are in the center of quite a lot of technological advances that's there in the state of Assam. Assam Agriculture University and also CSIR is there in Jorhat. Mechanization for northeastern produce is not always easy because our sizes are different, our shapes are different, and we don't produce uniform. Every farmer has a different kind of yield because there is no, there's no irrigation that, and there's no farm inputs that you have standard yield across farms. So although we have a lot of produce, every pumpkin is a different size, every potato is a different size. So mechanization, as we understand in rest of India, does not always translate into northeast. Having said that, there are all these institutions like CSIR, ICAR, AAU, who have a basket of technologies for Northeast. That's how we took technology, learned technology, scientists, and then we took it to the farms, took it to the fields. Post COVID, we're working on something which is, a community slaughterhouse model where we're trying to revolutionize and clean the meat chains across the region. And for labor, I have a very simple answer. I think the skilled labor for startups is sort of an oxymoron because the first skilled labor for your company should be yourself. And once you're skilled in doing what you want to be done, I think you can then build up an entire team for doing the same thing. That's I think you have your answer.
Thank you. Thank you. I think that's it from here. Although there are a lot of questions, I think we can maybe forward them to you. You can send them to us and we'll forward them to the concerned speakers and would request them to maybe respond to them later. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, all the speakers, all the participants for joining in. I think this has been a wonderful session, a mix of virtual and physical presence. A very good session indeed. Thank you so much. May I now invite Mr. Hemendra Mathur to sum up and give the concluding remarks.
Well, all I want to say is that it's been a great session. Clearly, a lot of messages coming out of it. But I think at the bottom line, as all the panelists said, that we need to listen to farmers. We have to be conscious of what he's looking for, and we need to improve the farm economics. At the end of the day, it's all about helping farmer earn more, right? Helping him diversify his income sources, optimizing his cost of inputs, right? And de-risk farming for him, through multiple solutions, which William also talked about. So I think that should be the bottom line of whatever agri-tech or food tech that you are doing or intend to do. All I want to say to the entrepreneurs in particular who are on the call that it's a huge opportunity. We have 600 odd startups. I'll be surprised if in next 10 years we don't have 6,000. And I'm not talking startups which are like going to monopolize like what we have seen in urban focused startups. I doubt there's going to be an Amazon or a Paytm or a Netflix in agri-tech. There will be multiple such winners. So a lot of people ask me, so and so got funded. So is there a place for me? So I tell them, look, it's all about creating the market. It's not about fighting with others. The whole ecosystem is in fact very collaborative. So I will encourage a lot of startups who want to build a career in agri-tech or food tech to look at it seriously. There is a lot of upside. The next decade in particular is going to belong to this sector. And of course, a place like Assam, I think is a huge opportunity area, totally and explode. be it organic foods or be it a lot of interesting products which are there, which a lot of value chains which are there, which are unexplored. I think state like Assam has a lot to give to this sector. I think with those words I'll conclude. And again, thanks all the organizers, Vicky, and everyone on the panel for some wonderful insights and giving me this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Imendraji. Thank you, all the speakers. With this, we come to the close of the program. Thank you. Thank you for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, please. Thank you.